We're here. We're live. I'm with Alejandro and Elena Bensonoff, and this is our, God knows, I can't remember how many times we've done this. It's about our fourth or our fifth show. We're going to give a breakdown insofar as it's possible, insofar as Alejandro and Elena are prepared to disclose the nature of the technology, the algorithm that's being used here, and the background connected to Dr. Hawkins and that consciousness scale. Could you please just give the audience 3 or 4 minutes background again on how this works, why it's of serious interest and consequence? The floor is yours for the next 3 or 4 minutes.
Yes, wonderful. Well, first I want to say that it's critical that we as human beings, of course, our nature is to compare everything and to judge. And I want to make sure this is something we haven't voiced enough together in those live episodes, but in our Vibrational Revelations, it's something that we start off saying every single episode. The judgment aside, all the stories aside, every path is absolutely unique and divine. Everyone plays an important role in this divine matrix, right? And the human experience. And the reason we started doing these revelations is because couple of years ago, we began to question the nature of reality. We began to question why did we feel internal discrepancy from the stories that we were hearing and what we were deeply feeling inside. So we began to test different systems. Of course, I've been using scalar waves for measuring quantum field for different medical purposes. And then we realized, well, there's a way that we can incorporate Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And his scale of consciousness is absolutely beautiful. We don't actually use kinesiology. Of course, this is something that he has done, and he's given this tremendous gift to humanity. So all we do is just incorporate the scale into our work. We use 3 different instruments, in measuring different aspects, of course, that we cover throughout our episodes, and you will see us cover them today. And it's done in a way to where we're absolutely not attached to the stories. We use a photograph, we use a name, and there's many other aspects that we use in measuring each individual. So that's how we get the numbers. It is not linked to AI. It is not linked to any algorithm. It is not online. It's done offline using scalar waves. And actually what we recognize through doing thousands of reading, all this information is available in the field, in the divine field or the biofield of human information, because we all collect this, or the field collects this database based on our emotions, events, and situations. Everything gets recorded. Past, present, and future are all recorded. And therefore, it's knowing how to retrieve this information in the here and now. So we're truly honored to share this information with all of you. And hopefully it will inspire you and also make you recognize, you're not stuck to just one frequency. Everyone has a journey. You can transcend your frequency. You can go up, you can go down. And doing lifetime readings, we actually recognize that people do go up and down. It is a beautiful hero's journey that every human being is here on. So honor yourself, celebrate yourself, and it is through those characters that we do get to understand ourselves much better.
And just to take that hero's journey to the next level, even Anthony Fauci is on a hero's journey?
Everyone is.
Okay, so that's just generic. Well, what you're being very universalist in embracing in your attitude. So you're suggesting that every soul clearly migrates to this plane of existence for a very, very good, appointed and anointed reason. And in that sense, that everyone has absolute relevancy anyway, right?
Yes.
So where does the free will thing come into it then? What's the point? If we're all here, we're all relevant. Let's elaborate a little bit on that.
I love that. Do you want to answer that?
Well, you get to, before we incarnate, we decide what frequencies we want to experience in this lifetime, right? And then we are given free will to exercise it in order to decide where, when, and how, and with whom we want to experience those frequencies with. The free will takes part as soon as we recognize that a situation is not beneficial to our journey, we decide to rather bathe in it or retreat from it. Yeah. So it is our own responsibility to recognize, number one, that we have the power to discern what is beneficial for our journey, to our life experience, and then exercise our free will to decide what to do next. Yeah?
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm putting up slides. We're starting up with Nityananda. Okay, Nityananda. Here he is. Date of birth, 1978. Born in India. Lives in India, alive and well at the age of 43 and chuckling whilst he taps into his iPhone by best accounts. That's Nityananda. He's the founder of the Trust Nityananda Dhyanapitam, which has temples and ashrams in many countries. Following accusations and charges of rape and abduction in Indian courts, he absconded from India, citing threats of assassination and mob lynching, and sought refuge from the United Nations. Nityananda made several claims that he delayed the sunrise for 40 minutes, that he could make cattle speak, and that he could disprove the correctness of the massed energy equivalence formula E=mc², including Kundalini and third eye awakening. He claimed that the person would be able to see through smog and walls. Disciples of Nityananda claim that he gave initiations through third eye to a class of 82 blind children, thus curing them of blindness. In 2019, he declared that he had created a Hindu island nation called Kailasa and claimed to issue passports and a currency in August of 2020. He launched the Reserve Bank of Kailasa on Ganesha Chaturthi and released its official gold currency. Well, good for him on that score. Kailashtian dollars is the name of his currency, and the bank would be structured on the lines of the Vatican Bank. Wow, I'm looking forward to seeing this guy's numbers. I really am. So Kailasa is a nation founded by Nityananda, without borders, created by dispossessed Hindus around the world. He claims that Kailasa is the world's only sovereign Hindu nation. And Kailasa has also been described as a network of NGOs spanning 3 countries. Interesting. So let's go through his numbers. Nityananda's essential frequency is 50. Take it away. And guys, just before we launch in, we've created a new format here, as you can see. So we're not going to be jumping around. You're just going to see Elena and Alejandro. You can see an image there of our gurus. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that margin. And those abbreviations, well, you'll learn what they are as we proceed. But learn them because this is the new format for every show moving forward. So Alejandro and Elena, over to you. Nityananda, soul frequency 50.
Yes, overall vibrational frequency is 50, which is the level of apathy, right? We tend to disconnect from the world and become numbed, actually, disconnect emotionally, especially. He incarnated at the frequency of 200, which is the level of courage. Was born at the frequency of 110, which is the level of fear. So he was definitely impacted by whatever his mother was experiencing at the time while he was in utero. Health, he is at 55, which is again the level of apathy. You know, he's disconnected, and we incorporate health is entails the connection of between mind, body, and soul. Actually, finances, he is at 400, and this is yes, one of actually his highest number on his chart. It makes sense of what you just mentioned.
We're setting up the bank and all of that. Yeah. Amazing.
Exactly. Yes, finances are 400, which is reason, high intellect, right? Creativity, he is at 30, which is guilt. Relationships, he's at 20.
And again, 20 out of 1,000, right? For people.
20 out of 1,000, yes. 20 is the level of shame. Personal growth, he is at 55, which is one would expect much, much higher numbers from a guru, right?
Yeah.
Philanthropy, 50. Again, the level of apathy. Intuition, 50. And in the joy, he is at 38%. So
ooh, that's very interesting.
Yes. That is how much he's actually enjoying the role that he's playing in this lifetime. In the ego, how much he's paying attention to the ego is at 100%. And we find this often when someone has 100% in the ego, they have narcissistic tendencies,
combined with
low compassion.
And relationships at low frequency.
Yes, in relationships at 20 especially. Yeah, more than likely that's his case. In the now, in the present moment, he is 43% of the time in the now. Integrity, 19% out of 100%.
I'm sorry, but that is terrible. That's terrible. Oh.
Yes, it's extremely low. Self-awareness, 93%. Clarity, 95%. So he's very clear about his mission in life, or what his vision of life, I will say.
Right.
His alignment with divine purpose is at 47%. So we find this often, that people that are vibrating below their incarnation vibrational frequency, they tend to be deviating from their alignment of their divine purpose, with their divine purpose.
Right.
That is his case, right? Alignment with personal purpose, he is at 98%. Okay. Compassion, 34%. Again, very low. Energy purity, 28%. So more than likely, with this vibrational frequency of 50 overall, and the energy purity of 28%, we feel safe enough to say that he's being hijacked by entities, more than likely.
Okay, so 28% energy purity, intuition 19%. Is that intuition or integrity?
Integrity.
Integrity is 19%. Intuition is 50%. Relationships 20%. Isn't that the most worrying thing of all?
Yes.
Along 34% in compassion also. Yeah?
Right. Really worrying. So in utero 200, birthed at 110, is now at 50, is an absolute catastrophic failure, correct?
Yes, he's choosing, right, to completely deviate from his path.
From his divine purpose, yes.
And it's not as though he was in utero in a particularly high frequency at all. But the fact that he plummeted from 200, 110 down to 50 is pretty staggering. Now, I wonder how much of that's got to do with the fact that he was bigged up as a son, as a child god. And he was really lionized as a child god. Can you imagine as an infant being put on thrones and being lionized and worshipped? And I mean, obviously that's the thing in my mind that must have just dragged him into this egoic space. And then, of course, he's excelling only in this idea of sovereignty through money and gold and, creating a new banking system and what have you. But is that creative? Because his creativity is only 30 out of 1,000, which is 3%, So he's a strange mix, isn't he?
Definitely.
Would you trust him with your money?
Definitely not.
Not only not with money, but I wouldn't even go to his ashram.
Okay. Well, any other comments before we move on?
No, it's always fascinating to see characters. We call everyone as a character because everyone is playing their role.
Yeah.
He didn't incarnate to play the shadow, but he's choosing. So you said, where does free will come in? He's choosing to play in the shadow. And what we notice is anytime the frequencies are below 200, this is a frequency of there's a lot of manipulation that can come in, but also frequency of victimization.
Got it.
So this is where the hijacking can happen, and it's very difficult to employ your own free will to play out.
Very good. Well, thank you. Sorry, folks, any followers of Nithyana, we're just giving to you the scalar frequency readings on this individual. That is what we're seeing. Right, let's move on. Guru Nanak. I personally love this guy. Date of birth, 29th November 1469, so 15th century. Born in Pakistan. He died in 1539. He was 69 years of age. Also known as Baba Nanak. He was the founder of Sikhism and is the first of the 10 Sikh gurus. He traveled across Asia teaching people the message of one God who dwells in every one of his creations, constituting the eternal truth. He set up a spiritual, social, and political platform based on equality, fraternal love, goodness, and virtue. His words are registered in the form of 974 poetic hymns, or shabda, in the holy text of the Sikhs, because he is the founder of Sikhism. The Guru Granth Sahib, it's part of Sikh religious belief that the spirit of Nanak's sanctity, divinity, and religious authority descended upon each of the 9 subsequent gurus. According to Sikh tradition, the birth and early years of his life were marked with many events demonstrating that he'd been blessed with divine grace. He died in Kartarpur at the age of 70. His body, it says 69 there. Forgive me, Wikipedia got that one wrong. His body was never found. When the quarreling Hindus and Muslims tugged at the sheet covering Nanak's body, they found instead a heap of flowers. Wow. Beautiful. Let's look at Guru Nanak's numbers. There we go, 700. Wow, amazing. Over to you.
Yes. Overall vibrational frequency is 700, which is the enlightened level. He incarnated at 850, also enlightened level, right? That 1000 being the highest, as you mentioned earlier. At birth, he was born at 850 again. When it comes to his health, he was at 850. He had an enlightened relationship with mind, body, and soul. When it comes to finances, he is at 250, which is the level of neutrality. Live and let live. He was comfortable. Creativity, he was at 1000, which is the maximum for the human experience. Amazing. Relationships, 750. Personal growth, 975. Philanthropy, 750. Intuition, 950. In the joy, 95%. In the ego, 18%. That's wonderful. So far, the lowest percentage we found in the ego is with Yeshua. And this is the second lowest so far. In the now, 99%. Integrity, 100%.
Wow.
Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. His alignment with divine purpose, 100%.
Wow.
His alignment with his personal purpose, 100%. His compassion, 100%. And we didn't do the energy purity because, he's deceased. We're only doing energy purity for those that are alive, right? Yes, amazing.
Okay. So remarkable numbers. I mean, in some ways, the best numbers we're going to be reading today, certainly when it comes to creativity, right?
Yes.
Yes.
On creativity, this guy's off the chart. But integrity, personal growth, I mean, that's remarkable. And what I find interesting here is he was born at 850, in utero at 850, and then sunk to 700. What's that all about?
To 7. I mean, the only number that you can see on his chart that's somewhat off, but actually it doesn't, I think, even matter, is his finances at 250.
Right.
But I think it's a comfortable place. 250 is a neutral zone. So I would imagine that would be the only thing that would bring his numbers down. But everything else is just beautiful. He was a beautiful, remarkable being that created the Sikh movement.
Yeah.
And no wonder that so many people around the world follow him, because he was truly a beautiful soul.
Okay, we're going to move on to Amma, the hugging saint, mother. I've had some issues there myself. I went to the ashram and I consulted also with some masters in India, and I was told that the backstory there is not as healthy as people would like to believe. I'm not going to use this forum to explain that, but I did refuse to take darshan with her. I didn't stay. I actually left the ashram and fled back to Kerala. I had a 3 or 4 hours segued to sit with her and meet with her in a meeting that had been set up for me by the Vaidyaratnam Raghavan, the master of Ayurveda, the Vedic master of India. And this was a few years ago. So I was personally very curious to learn the figures. And I see that you've seeing figures on her that are not that bad, which is pleasant to see, despite the mafia that surrounds the woman. Let's just look at Amma, date of birth 1953. She's 67 years of age, known as the Hugging Saint, and her numbers are as follows. Soul frequency 500. Over to you.
Yes. So her overall frequency is 500, which is the frequency of love. She incarnated at a frequency of 525, love. She was born at the frequency of 525. So her experience from in utero or incarnation to birth was not impacted. Health, she views through the frequency of 400, reason. Finances, she views through the frequency of 100, fear. So there is that one, I would say, imbalance, right? Creativity, she views through the frequency of joy, 540. Relationships, she views through the frequency of 500, love. Personal growth, she's committed to her own personal enlightenment, which is a frequency of 700. Philanthropy, she views through the frequency of love, 500. Intuition for Amma is at the frequency of enlightenment, 700. She enjoys playing her role 96% of the time. She's 54% in her ego, 98% in the now. Her integrity is at 100%. Self-awareness at 98%. Clarity at 98%. She's aligned with her divine and personal purpose at 100%. Her compassion is at 100%, and energy purity at 95%.
Okay. Well, just a little bit of background on Amma, Indian guru in the state of Kerala, born to a family of fishermen. She has 6 siblings. Part of her growing up chores was gathering food scraps from neighbors for her family's cows and goats. She was confronted with intense poverty in her youth. She would bring people food and clothing from her own home, despite the fact that she was, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, her family, which was not wealthy, scolded and punished her. She began to spontaneously embrace people, to comfort them in their sorrow. A continuous stream of love flows from her to all of creation. This is the story to her. In 1981, after spiritual seekers had begun residing at her parents' property, because I know she became famous. This is what the Vaidyaratnam Raghavan taught me. He said she became famous by sitting on a rock and hugging people, backpackers who were doing the Lonely Planet routes, pathways. And she kind of built up a reputation that way. People would say, oh, if you're going to walk down that way, it's a beautiful part where she lives. And they said, you must go to the rock and get a hug from the hugging Amma. And that became, the hugging saint. You know how it is in India. But the story I was given was that the fishermen around her were kind of mafia racket, and they decided to create a business around the fact that all these backpackers were coming and getting a hug from her, and they started to charge people for it, So, and that became money for an ashram. The ashram became a whole thing, typical Indian story. All I can say is when I went to the ashram, I was appalled. Energetically, I was so appalled. I turned around and drove back 7 hours to get back to the Vaidyaratnam's ashram. And when I walked in, he looked up and laughed at me, early hours of the morning, 4 a.m. And he said, you saw? I said, yes, I saw. And he said, good, because that's my litmus for you. Because I had asked for that meeting to be set up. So I had that strange backstory. I don't know if I was picking up on a different energetic connected to the mafia around her, but it was ugly. And, the way she was handled on stage, thousands of people there, and she getting on stage, her handlers pushing people's face into her to get a little hug and then pushing them off the stage. It was horrible. It was like a goddamn factory production line, and the energetic was vile. I read auras. It was terrible. And I also went around the ashram speaking to key people in the kitchens and what have you to see the mood. And it was so vexatious and just ugly. Anyway, that was my personal experience, and I'm honor bound to speak to it. I'm pleased, however, that you tell me that her own numbers are great. The fact that a toxic industry may have built up around her is in a way neither here nor there. I'm pleased that you've given these numbers, so thank you for that. Let's move on now to. Forgive me for being slightly behind on all of this. I've got too many bloody notes here. Right, there we go. Next one. A lot of you are going to love this. Muji.
Muji.
Date of birth. One moment. Sorry. Just
Yes.
I'll your slide in a moment.
Yes.
Born in 1954 in Jamaica. Lives now between the United Kingdom and Portugal. He's 66 years of age. Much beloved by people around the world. Over to you, Alejandro.
Yes. His overall vibrational frequency is 350, which is the level of acceptance. He incarnated at the frequency of 450, which is the level of reason. He was born at the frequency of 250, which is the level of neutrality. So he was somewhat affected by whatever his mother was experiencing at the time. He was in utero. Finances. Health is at 250, which is neutrality. Finances, 350, which is acceptance. Creativity, 500, that is the love frequency. He has a love relationship with creativity. Relationships, also 500. Personal growth, 750. He has an enlightened relationship with this aspect of personal growth. Philanthropy, 500. Intuition, 510. In the joy, 96%. In the ego, 69%. In the now, or in the present moment, 95%. Integrity, 97%. Self-awareness, 99%, clarity, 95%. Now, his alignment with his divine purpose is at 90%. His alignment with his personal purpose is at 100%.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Carry on.
His compassion is at 99%. And his energy purity is at 92%.
So interesting. So for me, what stands out there is his divine purpose and his personal purpose not being aligned there. Could you drill into those two numbers? 90% divine purpose, personal purpose 100%. How can you have that disparity?
Yes, this is how we look at it. Often, like I mentioned earlier, is that when you vibrate at the frequency, what your current frequency is below the frequency you incarnated at, more than likely you're going to be further and further away from being in full alignment with your divine purpose.
Right.
Yes. So that is the case with him now. Okay.
Very good. But I mean, all things considered, in utero 450, born 250, he's now at 350, so he's on the ascendancy, which is healthy. Healthy relationship with money, is that this 350 a healthy relationship?
Yeah,
it is. Yes, it is a healthy relationship. Yes, anything from 200 and above is really on the side of power, right? Anything below 200 is the side of force. Yes.
Gotcha. And 500 creativity. Sorry, carry on, Elena. Carry on.
I was going to say he has a lot of love frequency and he has an enlightenment frequency. So that also gives you a lot of insight. You know, when you look into someone, how they relate to others, his relationship area, his personal growth, his philanthropy is high.
His compassion at 99% as well. Yes.
He's a beautiful human being.
Good. So let's just give a little background on Muji here. He was born Tony Paul Mu Young in Port Antonio, Jamaica in 1954. His mother migrated to the United Kingdom when he was 1. His father died when he was 8. He was raised by a strict uncle until he moved to London to be with his mother as a teenager. By 30 years of age, he was working as a street artist, supporting his wife and child. In 1985, his sister Cherry was shot and paralyzed during a police raid on her home. sparking the 1985 Brixton riot, which was very famous. In 1987, Mooji had an encounter with a Christian, which began his spiritual quest. He continued to work as an art teacher till 1993, when he quit and went traveling in India, attending satsangs of the Indian guru Papaji. He returned to England in 94 when his son died of pneumonia. He continued to travel to India, each time returning to London. He became a spiritual teacher in 1999 when a group of spiritual seekers became his students. He continues to give satsangs now at various locations around the world, regularly attracting over 1,000 people from 50 nationalities. He holds meditation retreats, sometimes with up to 850 people. He purchased a 30-hectare property in Portugal and created an ashram called Monte Sahaja. And that's where he is essentially today. He's inspired by the philosophy of Hinduism, and his followers describe a satsang with him as a meeting in truth, where people come from all around the world to ask questions about life and find peace and meaning. Great, good for him. Nice numbers. Thank you for that. That was really edifying to listen to that. Next up on our hit list. Oh, people, really, a lot of you are going to be very unhappy about this. Sorry, disclaimer, blame Elena and Alejandro. Date of birth, 1965. Place of birth, India. Age 55. I give you Swami Ramdev, who looks like Blackbeard, something out of Pirates of the Caribbean. Let's look at his numbers. Yeah, boom.
One thing I want to say, do not punish the messengers. We're just the messengers retrieving the information from the divine field. We're just revealing this information. That's it. We're not a collective.
Before you even go into the numbers, just whilst people reflect on this image. So he was born in a Hindu family in 1965. Parents were farmers. He claims he was paralyzed when he was 2.5 years old and was later cured by practicing yoga. He rejected being taught in English with curriculum set under Thomas Babington Macaulay. Good for him on that score. He fled from home and began to study Indian scripture, yoga, and Sanskrit. He preferred Gurukul schools because they were traditional. He left to become the student of Acharya Baldevji in Gurukul, who gave him the name Ramdev. At around 25 years of old, he took sannyasi diksha and adopted the name Swami Ramdev from Shankar Dev Ji. He spent the next 3 years in the Himalayas in search of moksha. Then he moved to Haridwar, where he practiced self-discipline and meditation, spent several years, blah, blah, blah. 2006, he was invited by Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, for those of you who don't know, to deliver a lecture on poverty alleviation at a United Nations conference. He is also the judge of a reality show called Om Shanti Om. I got to see that one. He was one of the 9 personalities invited by Prime Minister Modi. Okay, in 2017, a district court blocked the sale of an unauthorized biography about him entitled God-Man to Tycoon, The Untold Story of Baba Ramdev. Over a 20-year career, he became the face of a company that he founded, an Ayurvedic company that he founded. Clearly, he's made a lot of money. Good luck to him. The notes here are far too long. I just can't get through them. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to have time to go through these notes. I wish I could parenthesize them. But there a lot of shocking stuff in any event. Boom, 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 boom. A lot of police stuff and controversy, tear gas, police shelling, stuff connected to his ashram. He tried to escape capture by disguising himself as an injured woman, but was arrested 2 hours later, flown back to his ashram, banned from entering Delhi for 15 days. He told reporters that his fast was not over yet and would continue with his civil resistance. He ended his fast on the 9th day, blah, 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 was hospitalized 2 days. Look, a lot of controversy around this character. Okay, love him or not. These are his numbers. Over to you, Elena.
Yes. So Swami Ramdev, overall frequency 125. And this is a frequency that we quite often see as a frequency of addicts, whether it's seeking for power hungry, addiction, sex addictions, drug addictions, whatever it might be. Okay, so that's 125 frequency. He incarnated at the frequency of 250, which is a frequency of neutrality. He was born at the frequency of fear, 100. He views health through the frequency of 250, which is the frequency of neutrality. Finances, he views through the frequency of 50. Again, 50 is apathy, but it's also used as a frequency of manipulation. Creativity, he views creativity through the lens of fear. So he creates through fear, 100. He views relationships through the frequency of 50. Again, 50 is apathy, and therefore it's linked to manipulation. Personal growth, he views through the frequency of 125, which is an unfulfilled desire, again, addiction. Philanthropy, the art of sharing and giving, he views through the frequency of 100, which is the frequency of fear. What's interesting is he has very high intuition, 700. So I would say this is his superpower in his chart, is using his intuition. He enjoys his role, playing his role 88% of the time. He's in the ego, 100%. He's in the now, 82%. In his integrity, he's 51%. Self-awareness, 92%. Clarity, 100%. He's in alignment with his divine purpose, 66%. And again, it's farther away from 100% mark because he's much lower than how he incarnated. His alignment with his personal purpose is 100%. His compassion is at 34%, quite low. And his energy purity is at 64%.
Wow. Interesting numbers. So being born at 100, in utero 250, he's now at 125. Is that a positive thing?
I mean, he's compared to all the other numbers, I would say we have to look at the big picture. We can't just look at that one number. So we have to see where he stands on the most important aspects, right, of his life, which is relationships, 50, right? Personal growth, 125. So somebody who is a guru, who is claiming to be this religious leader at 125, that should give you a big insight, right? And philanthropy at 100. So those are the things that are alarming. If his other frequencies were in a different place, that would be a better thing. But right now, where he stands, and also with his compassion at 34%.
Okay, yeah. And what the money at 50 out of 1,000, 50 out of 1,000 on money. And despite the fact that a lot of his life is geared to, and the controversy is about money and companies and generating wealth. So what does that tell you about him? 50 is really unhealthy, connected to money, right?
Yes, it's manipulation. So he's using it. He's kind of disconnected, but he's using it for his unfulfilled overall 125 frequency, which is the addiction.
Right. And at 51, an integrity is also not a good indicator then.
Right.
Not a good sign.
Okay, well, very interesting. So there you have it, folks. Swami Ramdev. We've got about 1,400 people who joined us. You're very welcome. Thank you for looking in. I'm with Alejandro and Elena, who need no introduction to my audience. Let's look at the next. This is a beautiful soul. Ram Das, date of birth, April 6, 1931. Date of death, December 22nd, 2019. Born Boston, died in Hawaii. Aged 88, a much beloved character around the world. Let's look at his numbers. 500, pretty neat. Over to you.
Yes. Overall vibrational frequency, 500, which is the level of love. He incarnated at 500. He was born at 350, the level of acceptance. He viewed the aspect of health through the lens of acceptance as well. Finances, the lens of reason, high intellect. Creativity, 750. That's the level of enlightenment. Relationships, 525. Personal growth, 950.
Enlightenment, yeah.
Enlightenment, yes. Philanthropy, 410. Intuition, 525.
Love, yeah.
Yes, had a loving relationship with intuition. In the joy, 96%. In the ego, 87%. In the now, 96%. His integrity was at 98%. His self-awareness, 100%. His clarity, 98%. And his alignment with his divine purpose and his personal purpose is at 100%.
Very good.
His compassion at 95%. And we didn't do energy purity for obvious reasons. Yes.
So
Wow. This is great. Carry on, Elena.
I was going to say, in this case, because you asked like about divine purpose alignment, it's very clear to see, he was incarnated at 500. He dropped his frequency at birth, but you can see he's transcended his birth frequency back into his incarnation frequency. And so many other numbers are so much higher, So he is in alignment with his divine purpose, and you can clearly see why.
And that especially due to his commitment to personal growth, at 950.
Right.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. So just some background there. He was born Richard Alpert, son of a lawyer in Boston, had a bar mitzvah, but was disappointed by its hollowness. God bless him. He considered himself an atheist, describing himself as inured to religion. I didn't have one whiff of God until I took psychedelics, he said. He attended school, graduated in 1948, blah, 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 58. He was an assistant clinical psychology professor, worked with the social relations and psychology department. It doesn't say which university, which is a bit stupid here. Was it Harvard? It was Harvard University. After returning from a visiting professorship at the University of Berkeley, California in 1961, devoted himself to joining Timothy Leary in experimentation with intensive research to the potentially therapeutic effects of hallucinogenic drugs such as psilocybin, LSD, and the others. And that was through their Harvard project. In addition, he assisted the Harvard Divinity School graduate student in 1962, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, this is irrelevant. At 78, Ramdas learned that he had fathered a son as a 24-year-old at Stanford during a brief relationship with a history major, and that he was now a grandfather. The fact came to light when his son, Peter, who was a 53-year-old banker in North Carolina, took a DNA test after learning about his mother's blah, 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 blah. Okay, too many notes here. I'm sorry, I can't get through these notes. I just have to bypass them altogether. At 60 years of age, he began exploring Judaism. I think that's interesting, seriously for the first time. And he said, my belief is that I wasn't born into Judaism by accident. And so I needed to find ways to honor that. And from a Hindu perspective, you're born as what you need to deal with. And if you just try and push it away, whatever it is, it's got you. That's interesting. And that's so Ramdev. If you try and push something away, it's got you. It's got a hold on you. Mm-hmm. That's classic Ramdas thinking. Beautiful inversion logic. Great kind of modern day guru in that sense, and a wisdom keeper. Beautiful. So, you're impressed by all of the numbers, especially presumably creativity and personal growth, 750, 950. Remarkable soul, no?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
and he was one of the founders of Omega Institute, I believe.
Right. Now, if he was born at 350, in utero at 500, made his way back to 500 in the course of his life, that's a success.
Yes.
Great stuff. Beautiful. Let's move on to our next. Oh, my beloved Adidas Samraj, who was a beloved friend of mine, and I was very honored to know him as a friend for the last couple of years of his life. Born 1939, died in 2008. I was very, very saddened when he left us. Born in New York, died in Fiji, placed himself in Fiji, actually on a meridian there in order to anchor. This is the hyperdimensional physics aspect of this genius man. He was 69 years of age, known as Adida. Back in the day, he was known as Da Free John. I've got a fantastic story about him, which I can't tell. I'm just not allowed to. It's really because I have to use terrible language. So I'm going to do it some other time, because at some point I want to do some exposés on deeper dives on some figures connected to also my own meetings with them, what have you. But he was a remarkable man in many ways, a world-class artist, incredibly talented painter and artist. His thinking was extraordinary. He was really the prime influencer behind the figure today that many regard as the greatest intellect alive, and that's Ken Wilber. So Ken Wilber has been one of the biggest defenders of Adida. When he was known as Da Free John, he got into a lot of controversy back in the day. He was the usual. The federal government went after him. They made him out to be a sex cult guru and a complete a pirate. And he ended up moving to Fiji. He didn't flee there. He went to Fiji in order to anchor a certain timeline. The sort of ascensionist timeline, essentially speaking. He was a profoundly beautiful soul. I exchanged many notes and letters with him through his emissaries for the last couple of years. And he had an accuracy, a precision in his approach. So that was my personal experience of him. I'm really interested what you've discovered. These are his numbers here.
Yes. So one thing I want to say, because some of the people who are joining are not with us every week, and this is a great example of what we call the hero's journey. Another word I would like to describe his reading as Phoenix Rising. So he truly embodies this, and you will see why. Again, we cannot compare frequencies to other people because each and every person incarnates with their own divine path. So let's dive into Adida. Adida's overall frequency is 350. He incarnated at 250. 250 is neutrality, and he was born at the frequency of 100. This is exactly why we call his journey, if you were just to look at these three numbers, the Phoenix Rising, because he rose from a frequency of fear. He overcame his birth frequency, his incarnation frequency, and he transcended into a much frequency of 350. So this is a massive amount of work that this man has done. So again, it's never about judging and comparing. We have to look at the overall picture of where that person was. His health, he viewed through the frequency of courage, 200. Finances, he viewed through the lens of fear. So there's unprocessed fear there. Creativity, he had a very creative mind, which is the frequency of 400, exactly what Sacha just shared, right? So it's high reason, intellect, he created from that place. Relationships, he viewed through the frequency of 450, again, reason, powerful mind. He was fully committed to his personal growth, which is the frequency of enlightenment. And based on all of the thousands of readings we have done, this is, for this particular being, what has helped him transcend the frequencies of birth and in utero. This has been his guiding light in life, his personal commitment to personal growth. Philanthropy is the art of sharing and giving. In his case, it was a frequency of 50. Apathy. Intuition. His intuition was at 250. And oftentimes, I want to elaborate on intuition. People will say, well, does it mean I'm not intuitive? This has to do more with how much do you trust your inner guidance and you act upon it without shadow of a doubt. In his case, it was neutrality. In the joy, how much he enjoyed the role that he played was 85%. He was in his ego at 70%. So he learned to dance with his ego. He was in the now, 67%. He was in his integrity, 75%. Self-awareness, 88%. Clarity, 77%. Alignment with divine purpose, 77%. And in this case, you'll see it's off. And I believe it's due to a couple of other low frequency numbers that he didn't overcome because he had unresolved fears, right? Mm-hmm. Although his alignment with his personal purpose was at 98%. His compassion was at 83%. And we didn't measure his energy purity because he passed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the takeaway for me, thank you so much. I see this as a personal gift. I just love this. The takeaway for me is born at 100, in utero 250, and yet makes his way up to 350. I get it. I mean, that's just remarkable.
Yes.
Beautiful. Relationships 450 makes sense. He was never emotional or effusive. He was kind of detached, very circumspect, very detached, very unemotional in his engagement, and yet there was a lot of love, and one sensed that. Creativity 400, again coming at it from reason, right? Mm-hmm. And the curious thing is that as an artist, anyone who goes and sees Adida's art, Adida Samraj's art, it's only the last few years of his life that he was really involved in it. I introduced him to the president of Slovenia who was interested in receiving him. He never got to make it to Slovenia. Unfortunately, he died before he could. But I remember I was sitting with the president, and I'm name dropping here because President Janez Drnovšek of Slovenia. And I remember we sat together studying the book of Adidas that had been given to me, and looking at some of the images of his art, which was being staged in Venice, which is not far from Slovenia. And we were trying to get there to see the art exhibition, never got to do it. But his art, I studied for a couple of days in Ljubljana, and it was all straight lines and bold colors. It was very kind of very, very just squares and lines, but interdimensional, beautiful, lots and lots of layers of different primary colors and black and white lines, and mathematical, basically mathematical. So even his creativity, when you say his creativity is 400s, all comes from the reason. His art was such an explicit example of that. For me, I'm loving it because, yet again, you know, through you guys, I'm seeing how this technology is so absolute, so accurate, and in defining the real. I love it. Thank you so much for this. And I'm going to pass these numbers on to some of Adidas' closest followers, and they're going to also love it. So thank you for that. Let's move on to our next. I was almost said victim. Okay, let's move on to Bikram Chowdhury. Got about 1,500 people with us here. Many of you are going to know, I'm talking to the audience, many of you are going to know about Bikram yoga. It's pretty controversial stuff, really controversial stuff. And just so you all know, audience, very shortly, I'm going to be introducing you to a guru who's actually here in the room with me. And it's a surprise. You have to be patient a little bit longer, a few minutes. But Bikram Chowdhury, born 1944, place of birth, India, living in America. Let me just give you a quick background. So, Bikram, born in Calcutta, claimed to have begun studying yoga under Vishnu Charan Ghosh, and claims to have won the National India Yoga Championship for 3 consecutive years in his teens. Those claims proved to be false. Chowdhury developed a 26 posture series by piecing together sequences from over 500 poses and variations created by Ghosh and put it into his signature series. In 1971, he emigrated to America, began to teach yoga, opening his first studio in Los Angeles, taught his own style of yoga. The author Bridget Delaney describes the atmosphere around him as fawning. He was rude and insulting to students in Netflix's sexual assault and harassment allegations. Chowdhury has faced lawsuits alleging sexual harassment, assault, racism, and homophobia. By January 2014, 5 women were suing him with allegations including sexual harassment and sexual assault. Lawsuits accused him of rape, sexual battery, false imprisonment, discrimination, and harassment. One suit describes a cult-like atmosphere where members of his inner circle help him find young women to assault. Another suit claims that Chowdhury recruits volunteers from overseas, blah, blah, blah. It keeps going on. The Bikram yoga teacher, Sarah Bourne, filed a sexual harassment suit in March 2016. It goes on and on. It's not healthy. In May 2016, he returned to India, where he began opening yoga studios again in late 2016. In an interview, he responded to the accusations made against him by asking, "Why would I have to harass women? People spend $1 million for a drop of my sperm," and called his accusers trash and psychopaths. Well, not a nice piece of work. Let's have a look at Bikram Chowdhury, and over to you guys.
Yeah, so Bikram's overall frequency is 295, which is the frequency of neutrality. It starts at 250 and it goes until 309 frequency. He incarnated at the frequency of 400, which is the high mind, reason. He was born at the frequency of 300, neutrality. He views his health through the frequency of 540, joy. So no wonder this is where his focus has been. He views finances through the lens of 650, which is peace. His creativity he views through the frequency of 125. Again, that unfulfilled desire, addiction. Relationships he views through the frequency of 55. Keep in mind, 55 in relationships is the frequency of manipulation. It's apathy, so therefore manipulation. So no wonder there's so many allegations that came along with an outlash from so many women. He's committed to his personal growth at the frequency of 400, which is reason. He views philanthropy through the frequency of 30, which is guilt.
Terrible.
Intuition, he views through the frequency of 55. Again, 55 is apathy. He enjoys his role 58% of the time. He's 100% in his ego. He's 62% in the now. His integrity is at 44%. So pairing that up with relationships, it gives you a big insight, right? Self-awareness is at 97%. So he's fully aware of what he's doing. He's in his clarity, 98%. He is aligned with his divine purpose, 76%. So he's out of alignment. His alignment with his personal purpose is at 93%. His compassion is at 36%. And energy purity at 60%. So if you look at the compassion of 36%, 100% in ego, right? Integrity low and relationships at 55. It also gives you an insight into a character that is a narcissist. Okay.
Right. So the story, the backstories that I was reading to you kind of make sense.
Yes.
With what you're reading here. And to be born at 300, in utero 400, and to be 295, he's on the descent, clearly.
Yes.
By that. Relationship with money, 650. What does that tell you about his character?
Well, his two joys of his life is the health, anything related to body image, right? Or body, mind, soul, and finances. But relationships with human beings is giving you, yes, much deeper insight into his character.
And when you see personal growth at 400 in this context, philanthropy 30, intuition 55, then you're dealing with somebody who is quite cynically and calculatedly maintaining appearances, right?
That's right.
It is very possible, yes.
Fascinating. Well, okay, there you have it, followers of Bikram Chowdhury. Think twice. Seriously, think twice. We're doing these revelations for a reason, and that's to help you. Okay, let's move on to a much beloved man. Date of birth 1957, place of birth India, 63, alive and well, a beautiful man. I know a number of his key disciples, great people. Born to a Telugu-speaking family, he graduated from university in Mysore with a bachelor's degree in English. Despite a spotty attendance record and an irreverent attitude to tuition. At 13, he took yoga lessons from Raghavendra and kept practicing pranayama daily throughout his youth, albeit without spiritual aspiration. At the age of 25, in 1982, he went up Chamundi Hill and sat on a rock where he had a spiritual experience. 6 weeks later, he left his business to his friend and traveled extensively in an effort to gain insight into the mystical experience. And after another year of meditation and travel, he decided to teach yoga and share his inner experience. He began conducting yoga classes across India, traveling on his motorbike, subsisting on the produce of his poultry farm, rental, and donating the collections received from his students to a local charity on the last day of the class. Okay, a good guy all around. Was married, had a daughter who died in 1997. At that time, her father alleged that Vasudev had murdered her. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Mm-mm.
Good Lord, extraordinary. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Jaggi Vasudev was married to Vijaya Kumari. The couple had a daughter named Radhe. Kumari died in 1997. At that time, her father alleged that Vasudev had murdered her. Vasudev asserted that she had attained Mahasamadhi, the act of consciously and intentionally leaving one's body, and claimed that she had told him about it 9 months before her death. An FIR, don't ask me what that is, was filed against Vasudev, but the police eventually closed the investigation due to lack of evidence. Vasudev received the Padma Vibhushan, the second highest civilian award from the government of India in 2017, in recognition of his contribution to the field of spirituality. He stood 92nd in the Indian Express list of the 100 most powerful Indians. In 2012, he stood 40th in India Today's list of 50 most powerful Indians. Wow, that's all pretty interesting stuff. A lot of educational and social initiatives, environmental initiatives, way too many notes for me to read. I'm sorry, guys. I wish I could break this down. I simply can't. Okay, just the end bit. Criticism. Vasudev has been accused of promoting superstition and representing science. He propagates the claim unsupported by... Look, I'm not going to read that because that just sounds like Wikipedia bullshit. But let's just call him up. Looks like a pretty remarkable guy to me. Sadhguru, there you have it. Let's read his numbers.
I believe I saw him actually, Sacha, if I may say, his daughter is alive. I saw him post his daughter in a couple of his videos.
His
Right.
His wife is the one who passed away. Yeah. So,
Gotcha.
Yes.
yeah.
Well, do go on. Just read his numbers. I'm going to double check these notes.
Yes. His overall vibrational frequency is 550, which is the level of love.
Joy.
I mean, joy, I'm sorry.
Joy.
The level of joy. He incarnated at 750, which is the level of enlightenment. And he was born at 750. His health is at 650, the level of peace. Finances, 200, level of courage. Creativity, 550, again, the level of joy. Relationships, 200, level of courage. Personal growth, 800, level of enlightenment. He's definitely very committed to personal growth. Philanthropy is at 400, the level of reason, high intellect. Intuition, 525. In the joy, how much he enjoys his role, 90%. In the ego, 50%. In the now, 93%. His integrity is 100%. Self-awareness, 98%. Clarity, 97%. And his alignment with divine purpose is at 95%. His alignment with his personal purpose is at 99%. His compassion, 98%. And his energy purity is at 99%.
Wow, I'll tell you, this for me is such a conundrum, right? I mean, Elena, I can see it on you as well. This is a conundrum, this guy. Born 750, in utero 750, now 550, but still fabulous numbers. What do you make of this guy?
To me, he's a great guy.
Yes.
He has a couple of course, emotional unresolved issues as far as relationships, and I would say probably due to the loss that he experienced in his life, right? And finances at 200. I mean, I would say that these are the numbers that are bringing his overall frequency down, but he's in his joy. And I think overall you can feel that.
Yes.
When he speaks, you can feel his energy. You can feel what he's really about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Integrity at 100% is remarkable.
He embodies joy fully, no
Yes.
doubt, and 100% his integrity, 98%
Compassion.
his compassion. That really is beautiful. Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. And personal growth 800 is just remarkable, as you said. So what is his weakness, or what is his vulnerability or weakness that you can see?
Yeah. Relationships. You know, he's not in the below 200 frequency, so
If I
he's
were-
courageous. Yes.
If I were to sit down and negotiate a business deal with him, I would just tickle him. That is his weakness. That is his weakness.
Good, very good. Well, I'm very pleased at really sad numbers. Clearly a beautiful soul. Okay, let's put Osho up here. I'm going to read some quick background to you folks. Here, date of birth 1931, died 1990. He was poisoned. Place of birth and death, India, aged 58. Known also as Rajneesh, a childhood nickname King and Isha, Lord. He was born Chandra Mohan Jain, the eldest of 11 children. In his school years, he was gifted, and a rebellious student, gained a reputation as a formidable debater. He became critical of traditional religion, took an interest in many methods to expand consciousness, including breath control, yogic exercise, meditation, fasting, the occult, and hypnosis. He became briefly associated with socialism and 2 Indian nationalist organizations. However, his membership in those organizations was short-lived, as he couldn't submit to any external discipline, ideology, or system.
He was a rebel.
Complete rebel, yeah. So in 51, aged 19, he began his studies in India. Asked to leave after conflicts with teachers, he transferred to Jain College. Having proved to be disruptive and argumentative, he was not required to attend college classes except for examinations, and used his free time to work for a few months as an assistant editor of a local newspaper. Blah, 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 blah. Again, I'm so sorry. Way too many notes. I just can't read this all. I'm just going to have to bypass this, and we'll have to do with Margot's anecdotes. But there was a lot of controversy around his name. I'm going to leave you to bring that up, Margot. Let's jump in and look at his numbers. Take it away, guys.
Yes. Osho's overall vibrational frequency, 500, the level of love. He incarnated at 500 as well. He was born at 500. His health was at 500. He was full of love. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Finances, 200, the level of courage. Creativity at 400, level of reason, high intellect. Relationships, 200, level of courage. Personal growth, 500. Philanthropy, 540, the level of joy. Intuition, 800. In the joy, 89%. In the ego, 79%. In the now, 90%. Integrity, 96%. Self-awareness, 98%. Clarity, 100%. His alignment with divine purpose was at 86%.
I love the numbers. You move them.
Huh?
Divine purpose, 100%.
I'm sorry. I'm over here. Yeah, I'm trying to jiggle these papers. I'm sorry. His alignment with his divine purpose was 100%.
Mm-hmm.
His alignment with his personal purpose is 86%. His compassion, 98%. And we didn't do his energy purity because he is in the non-physical world at this moment.
All right. So, Margot, you're the one who knew him. I'm going to put you over there. Oh, there we go. So take it away, Margot. Talk us through. So he was born at 500, in utero 500, and died at 500. So very stable in who he was.
Yeah.
That's all about love, right, Elena?
Yeah. Actually, he was a remarkable teacher. I was fortunate enough to study with many teachers, many enlightened beings, I would say. And I would say that he was the most remarkable of them all. And I would put him way above Adida, who is your beloved, with whom I also had quite a few interactions. And also with Ramdas. Also, I spent a lot of time with Ramdas. I taught with Ramdas. But for me, Rajneesh was the most extraordinary of them because he was able to navigate and connect with me in different levels of reality, like through dream, through visions, at a distance, in lucid dreaming. So he would always be connected and always teach and answer my questions, which was remarkable for me. The other remarkable thing about him is that he was a philosopher, he was a great debater, great sense of humor, and he was another Sacha Stone. Because for the first time with Rajneesh, what I loved so much is that I would listen to his discourses and I would realize that most of the things I believed in to be real were actually made up. Like, for instance, he revealed that the Vatican was funded by the mafia. Blew my mind, and that was just an example among many. So by peeling away the onion, he taught me that nothing was to be believed except what I developed as my sovereign, analysis of the situations and my sovereign decisions about my life. And it was so precious to be able to learn that at a young age. So I will always be very grateful to him. I found it brilliant.
And
brilliant.
what was the big controversy about him? Was because he was targeted by the federal government, right?
Oh, that was just because he kept on bashing Reagan. He made fun of the prime minister, revealing to the world that he drank his piss in the morning.
The president or the prime minister of India?
The prime minister of India at the time. And he made a lot of fun about Reagan, who hated him. And, he was haunted by the man who became the Pope Benedict XII. What was his name? He was a German, Ratzinger. And Ratzinger was haunting him because his job was to be the CIA of the Vatican at the time. And he then would call the countries where Osho was trying to land to have a place to teach. And he would tell the country, the presidents, look, either you welcome this guy, in which case we stop all financial support and any kind of financial economic deals are off the table, or you tell him to leave. And then we maintained our usual statu quo. So everybody collapsed and surrendered, except the Greeks who had him for a while. All the youth of Greece came to sit by his feet. And he demonstrated, as he told me, that because this was his last life on Earth as a human, he didn't care whatever game he played. He didn't care to be nice. And so he was outrageous. And that was about him what I loved so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful. Great to have that first-hand testimony. And anything you want to just say on Ramdas?
Ramdas was a beautiful, beautiful soul. And I taught with him many times. One time in the house of the Goobers in Bel Air, and many times with Omega Institute, with whom he was very connected. And I have only good things to say about him. He was compassionate, he was joyful, even when he got paralyzed. And he was very much into Hanuman and into giving. And just beautiful man.
And who are the other figures that you've met?
Well,
Sadhguru, did you meet Sadhguru?
No, but the
Ramdev?
Hugging Mama, I never wanted to go see. I never, I felt from the beginning that
wasn't for you, huh?
No, the organization was, I didn't see the point of queuing up for 4 or 5 hours to get a hug from someone.
And Nityananda?
That's exactly how I felt.
Nityananda, no. Muji, I like. Let's see, there was another one.
And tell us about your time that you spent with Guru Nanak back in the 1472.
Guru Nanak.
That's a joke.
No, wait a minute. Guru Nanak was very beloved of Osho, who was born in a Jain family.
Right.
So Guru Nanak was close to my heart because
what about Bikram Chaudhuri?
Bikram catastrophe.
Yeah.
He's one of these many gurus. There's many more. I'm not going to give names here, but they're probably all of one par, is that they all think that they grew up in a culture where women were not important, they were secondhand citizens, and so they could use women as sexual instruments and nobody would have to know about it. And it's a catastrophe in India, all these gurus, because it was very hypocritical. Right. So he's one of them, but they're all there.
Right. And what about your guru?
I love him. I absolutely adore him.
Okay. Right. Thank you. That was beautiful. Beautiful getting this. So beautiful. Let's move on, folks. We're coming to the end. We've got one more reading to do, and it is Yogananda, who many regard as the most enlightened of the modern day gurus in the last century. Look, I'm going to read a little background here. He was born to a Hindu family of Bengali, Kayatha. According to his younger brother, from his earliest years, Mukunda's awareness and experience of the spiritual was far beyond the ordinary. When he was 11, his mother died. She left behind for him a sacred amulet given to her by a holy man who told her that Mukunda, which is what he was known as, was to possess it for some years, after which it would vanish into the ether from which it came. After finishing school, he left home formally and joined a hermitage in Varanasi. He soon became dissatisfied with its organizational work. Instead of meditation, he began praying for guidance. In 1910, his seeking after various teachers ended when, at the age of 17, he met his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. At this time, his well-guarded amulet that his mother had given before she died mysteriously vanished, having served its spiritual purpose. In his autobiography, he describes his first meeting with Yukteswar as a rekindling of a relationship that had lasted for many lifetimes. In July 1914, several weeks after graduating, he took formal vows into the monastic Swami order. He was allowed to choose his own name, so Swami Yogananda Giri became his name. In 1917, Yogananda founded a school for boys in West Bengal that combined education techniques with yoga and spiritual ideals. So I'm going to bypass all of these notes. I don't have the time to read them, but I will tell you he did meet with Mahatma Gandhi, who he initiated into Kriya Yoga, and the woman saint, Anandamoyi Ma, Giri Bala, an elderly yogi woman who survived without eating, was very famous at the time, and renowned physicist Chandrasekhara Venkata Raman, and several others. According to his autobiography, in June 1936, after having a vision of Krishna, he had a supernatural encounter with the resurrected spirit of his dead guru, whilst in a room at the Regent Hotel in Mumbai. During the experience, in which Yogananda physically grasped and held onto his guru's solid form, his guru Yukteswar, in the ghostly form, explained that he now served as a spiritual guide on a high astral planet and expounded truths in deep detail regarding the astral realm, astral planets, and the afterlife, the lifestyles, abilities, and varying levels of freedoms of astral beings. So that was much of what informed Yogananda's teachings. To do with his death, in the days leading up to his death, Yogananda began hinting to his disciples that it was time for him to leave the mortal realm. In March 7th, 1952, he attended a dinner for the visiting Indian ambassador to the United States and his wife at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. At the conclusion of the banquet, Yogananda spoke of India and America, their contribution to world peace and human progress, expressing his hope for a united world that would combine the best qualities. I don't know why I'm reading all of this. I'm so sorry. I can't even tell you, did he die in that? I have no idea. I'm so sorry, guys. Anyway, that essentially is all I'm going to read on the man. I've got too many footnotes here, but let's read his numbers and do a deep dive into the blessed soul known as Yogananda. I will just change that for his numbers. There we go. Take it away.
Beautiful. Yogananda incarnated at the frequency of 700. He was born at the frequency of 700, which is the frequency of enlightenment. His overall frequency was 800. So he transcended both his incarnation and birth frequency. He viewed health through the lens of 400, reason. Finances, he viewed through the lens of 450, again, reason. His creativity, relationships, personal growth, philanthropy were all at 950, and this is out of 1,000. Incredible. So he was so enlightened. No wonder that, Sacha, what you just read, sharing that he was believed to be the highest, the most enlightened being in the last century. Absolutely, this reveals it so clearly. His intuition was at the frequency of 800, again, enlightenment. He experienced joy playing Yogananda's role himself in this lifetime at 100%. His ego is at 41%. He was in the now, 100%. 94% in his integrity. He was self-aware and had clarity at 98%. His alignment with his divine and personal purpose was 100%. And his compassion was at 99%.
Wow.
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 That's numbers.
Fabulous stuff.
Just
Fabulous
being,
stuff.
yes.
So in a sense, out of today's numbers, and I just need to refer to the notes here, forgive me.
Best.
So he's definitely come, well, there were some other really good numbers. 700 Guru Nanak,
Yeah.
Yogananda 800. Yeah, so essentially, this guy, Yogananda, comes out pretty much ahead of the pack. And if you say, and that because not only was he born enlightened at 700 and in utero enlightened, but he betters himself nonetheless. Relationships 950. Wow, almost flatlining at Yeshua, right?
Very close.
450 money. What is that? That's reason, intellect.
Reason, intellect. He employed his intelligence, his intellect to make decisions in several areas of his life, but overall he was ruled by an enlightened, he looked through the world through an enlightened lens.
Right.
And that's really, I think, the legacy that he left and the wisdom that he shared with humanity.
Beautiful stuff. In the now, 100%. In the joy, 100%. Divine purpose, 100. Personal purpose. I mean, just those 4 readings, right? Joy, in the now, divine purpose, and personal purpose. Just by tallying those 4 numbers, if they're all at 100, which they are, that pretty much tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
Yes, in comparison to his frequency, because as you've seen in our past episodes, we revealed shadow players who also have 100% joy and alignment. But in his case, he absolutely embodied the light frequency.
Yes, the compassion factor will be the make a clear difference between the two. Those that are playing a role in the shadows, or those that are playing a role in the light, right? Even if they have both 100% in their in alignment with their divine purpose, 100% in the joy. But if you look at their compassion, you will see there be a big difference.
On Yeshua, on Jesus of Nazareth, can you remember offhand any of the other numbers on him?
Yes, I mean he was a 1,000 frequency, what we call the avatar. So 1,000 frequency is someone who is a fully integrated being. So he came at 1,000. There was a couple of avatars that we measured, including Mary Magdalene. She was an absolute equal frequency to him. So I would say that these were avatars. I would not call Yogananda as an avatar,
right? But
very close.
I mean, if you look at it from the divine perspective, Jesus' energy is incarnating in every one of us, in each one of us.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now it's depending on our awareness and depending on the experience that we want to live in this reality, and how much we allow for consciousness to flow is how much we can feel Jeshua's energy.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So the scale is from 0 to 1,000. Again, this is the only thing we incorporate in our, as far as from Dr. Hawkins' work. We expanded so much more because he actually incorporated just that one number as a frequency. If you read his book, and we recognize we're so much more than one number. This is why we've assigned all these other numbers to look into the depth of what makes up the reality of each human being. So in this case, Dr. Hawkins' scale goes from 0 to 1,000, 1,000 being fully integrated being. And we actually measured and confirmed that the divine creator's frequency is infinite. Okay, so for those of you that are wondering. But from 0 to 20 is a frequency of...
From 1 to 20, is the frequency of shame.
Yes. Then 21 to 30 is guilt. 31 to 50 is apathy. 51 to 75 is
grief. Is 75.
Grief. 75 is grief. At 100 is fear. 125 is desire, the addiction. 150 is anger. 200 is courage. And this is what we call the gateway that every human being is capable of walking through. It's the gateway of courage that makes you recognize you're not disconnected from yourself. You're connected to everything else.
Yes, 175 is pride, right before the
before courage
level.
250 neutrality, 310 willingness, 400 reason, 500 love, 540 joy, 600 is peace, and from 700 to 1,000 is enlightened state.
Very good. Thank you. So Elsa is asking, Margot, why are trolls claiming that Osho was involved in sexual abuse?
Well, because trolls love to claim all sorts of things. That's their job. But to my knowledge, he was one of the rare ones who wasn't hypocritical. And he didn't have any story of sexual abuse at all. He did have lovers, but then everybody does. What's the big news about that? He didn't claim that you had to be, abstinent if you were studying with him. Not at all. He just, on the contrary, liberated sexuality so that it would finally be seen and felt as something completely natural, healthy, and orgasm was the thing that was good for you to have. Hallelujah. I confirm this.
Yeah.
The moment you have an awakening into bliss, you awaken into your freedom and into your sovereignty, and you let nobody else decide for you. You decide the life you want to lead and where you want to live it and how you want to spend it. So,
very good. Thank you. Elena, Alejandro, any last comment? Anything we've missed out today?
Yeah,
with any comment?
I did see something. People say how, and this is the same question we're asked a lot, so I just want to clarify this. Why is it that we're allowed to measure this? So I want to verify and clarify a couple of things. Number one, all this information is available in the field for all of us to read. It's the same way you would pull a numerology and astrology report. We do not use birthdays, of course, to pull this information or retrieve this information out from the field. Now, as far as going into deep emotions, this is something we provide privately, but we would never read this publicly from a public figure without their permission. Mm-hmm. So we just go into basic numbers, which is something that you can find out on your own, because we're all broadcast stations. We broadcast energy and therefore information. So information can be retrieved from the divine field.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Beautiful. Love you guys. Thank you. And thank you to the audience. Margot, say goodbye.
Yes, I wanted to tell you that until tonight, I was a non-believer. I didn't think that anything about this whole thing. And about watching this show tonight, I'm now convinced of the opposite. I'm becoming, a believer.
That's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. See you in the next show. Much love. Thanks, Elena. Thanks.
Bye.